In 1960, DC found success with Justice League of America, as the comics with DC's first superhero team were selling way more comics than anything else. Expectedly enough, then Marvel publisher Martin Goodman took notice of this and immediately asked his editor Stan Lee to create a similar superhero team. And if you haven't figured it out yet, the result was the Fantastic Four #1 in 1961. But instead of copying DC's style of larger-than-life heroes, Lee and artist Jack Kirby introduced something different. They created heroes who argued, made mistakes, and dealt with everyday problems, much like you and I. These characters worried about bills as much as they did about aliens. And this decision, my friends, gave Marvel its own voice. Under Lee, Kirby, and later Steve Ditko, Marvel began its steady climb, one human flaw at a time. And in this video, we're going to explore every Fantastic Four comic that is an essential read before the upcoming Fantastic Four movie. But before I begin, please consider hitting those like and subscribe buttons. These two small clicks from you will help us tremendously in bringing you more of these marvelous videos. And now, let's begin. Fantastic Four 1961 #1, the birth of Marvel's first family and their fight with the Mole Man. This is where it all began. Fantastic Four #1 introduced a whole new team of superheroes and was actually the starting point of what would later become the core of the Marvel Universe. Now, some argue that the term Earth 616 didn't appear in the pages until Daredevil's #7, and that Marvel later backtracked its origin to Motion Picture Funnies Weekly #1, where the Submariner made his first appearance. But if you ask me, the real spark that ignited the Marvel Universe you and I know started here, with these four ordinary people, a rocket, and one bad cosmic storm. So let's dive right into the plot, okay? A mysterious man fires a flare into the sky, and three magical words appear in the sky in the most Silver Age way possible. With those bold letters, the world comes to know about the Fantastic Four. No one knows who sent it, and the general public goes nuts about what these words mean. But those who know what it means know exactly what to do and where it came from. Sue Storm is having tea when she notices the signal. She immediately vanishes, gets into a cab, and hands the baffled driver some cash before disappearing again. Ben Grimm, meanwhile, is struggling to find a coat that fits. He sees the flare and knows he has to leave, so he storms out of the store, but the door was too small for him. So he smashes into it before ripping open a manhole. Even though scared and confused cops were shooting at him, he charged through the sewers, then burst through the street, only to get hit by a car, which of course got heavily damaged. After all, it rammed into the Thing. Johnny Storm spots the flare while he's at the mechanics, fixing his hot rod. As soon as he sees the flare, he bursts into flame and takes off without an ounce of hesitation. The military assumes it's an attack and sends jets. Johnny takes them down reluctantly, but when a nuclear heat-seeking missile locks in, he's nearly done for. That's when impossibly stretchy arms grab the missile and hurl it out to sea. The man with the long arms is Reed Richards, and he's also the one who fired the flare gun. It was kind of like a bat signal, but for the Fantastic Four. He welcomes the others and says, "There is a task that awaits us. A fearful task." But before they handle it, we need to understand how this crew came to be. In a Cold War-era race to outpace the Soviets, scientist Reed Richards builds a rocket, which was used to explore cosmic rays. Joining him are pilot Ben Grimm and siblings Sue and Johnny Storm. Sue is also Reed's fiancée. Ben is not too happy about the mission because the ship lacks proper shielding against cosmic rays. But Sue calls him a coward, and that's enough to push him into flying. Years later, and more specifically in Fantastic Four #400, Sue admits this was a tactic to get Ben on board. He says it didn't matter since he would never have let Reed down anyway. Interestingly, in Fantastic Four: The Wedding Special #1, it's revealed that before the fateful flight, Reed and Sue are momentarily taken into the future, or Earth 6166, where they attend their 40th wedding anniversary with alternate versions of themselves. When they return, they remember none of it. Now, coming back to the main story, the rocket lifts off, enters space, and gets hit by a cosmic storm. The autopilot brings them back to Earth, but they're not the same. Each one now has a strange ability. Reed's body stretches like the most elastic rubber. Sue can turn invisible. Johnny ignites at will and can fly. Ben turns into a rock dark-skinned brute with immense strength. They name themselves Mr. Fantastic, Invisible Girl, Human Torch, and The Thing, and decide to use their powers to help the world. The comic then moves on to the part where our newly formed superhero team fights their first supervillain, aka the Mole Man. Reports of atomic plants across the globe collapsing start coming in. From the Soviet Union and Australia to South America and Africa, somehow the atomic plants were being swallowed whole into the Earth. No one knows how, but Reed Richards' awesome tech, which is conveniently called the radar machine, tells him that the next attack would take place in French Africa. Here, a massive monster tears through underground and soon retreats at the command of someone unknown, but not before ensuring that another nuclear plant went under the Earth. Reed connects the dots and pinpoints Monster Isle, a remote island equidistant from all the disaster sites. The Fantastic Four board their private jet and fly to the island. Ben thinks this was just a wild goose chase because Monster Island and its monsters were supposed to be a myth. On arrival, however, they encounter a three-headed dragon-like beast. Reed manages to subdue it, but a sudden cave-in splits the group. Ben and Sue end up on one side, Reed and Johnny on the other. Reed and Johnny fall into a glowing chamber, only to later learn that it was the Valley of Diamonds. Temporarily blinded because of the glare of thousands and thousands of diamonds, they find themselves in the lair of the Mole Man, who finally reveals who he was to Reed and his future brother-in-law. The Mole Man explains his path. You see, he was shunned by society for his appearance and eccentric ideas. Despite being a brilliant man, he was chastised by women he liked and people he wanted to work for. So he decided he would get away from people once and for all, and his search for the rumored land beneath the earth brought him to Monster Isle. There, he stumbled into a cavern, but fell during an avalanche and lost most of his vision. But his other senses sharpened, and he discovered the underground world. Now, he could perceive things in the dark, like a mole, and sense vibrations like a bat. Over time, one day at a time, one monster at a time, he built his subterranean empire by mastering the monsters of the Isle. Pretty convenient. Anyway, back on the surface, Ben fights a rock beast while it's about to attack Sue. Eventually, the whole team reunites and learns of Mole Man's plan to bring the surface world to its knees. He unleashes his monster army. Johnny diverts the largest beast while the others escape. As they flee through a tunnel, Johnny seals it behind them with a burst of flame. Back in the jet, they watch from the sky as Monster Isle begins to self-destruct. As for the Mole Man, it seems he finally had the solitude he needed and wanted, and continues to be the king of the Valley of Diamonds and the creatures that reside there. The Galactus trilogy, Fantastic Four, issues 48 to 50. Marvel's Galactus trilogy is the first time the Fantastic Four faced a threat so large that Earth itself tethered on the edge of extinction. Spanning Fantastic Four issues number 48 through 50, this storyline also introduces Silver Surfer in addition to Galactus, and it all starts with Maximus being Maximus. So let's check out what the story's about. Maximus and the Negative Zone. The story begins with Maximus, who you may know is Black Bolt's slightly unhinged brother. He uses his newest weapon, the Atmo Gun, to mess with the atmosphere itself in an attempt to kill the humans. The weapon's vibrations rattle the entire Great Refuge, and Maximus thinks his wishes for human extinction had all but come true. But as usual, he overestimates the gun's power. Aside from a few tremors, Earth's population remains fine. Gorgon and Karnak try to arrest him, but he escapes and reverses the Atmo Gun's polarity. This, in return, generates a field of negative energy that slowly seals off the Inhumans' homeland from the rest of the world. Reed quickly realizes that they can't counter this with science, since it's become a negative zone filled with negative energy. While he, Sue, and Ben make a run for it, Johnny hesitates because Crystal was still inside. Oh, and Crystal is the daughter of Inhuman nutritionists Quaylen and Amber, and the younger sister of Medusa. She wants to stay with him too, but her family pulls her back. Ben drags Johnny out of the barrier seconds before it closes completely, and it breaks Johnny's heart. He believes he'll never see Crystal again, and he was not wrong to think that. Nevertheless, the Fantastic Four board their jet and return to New York. But Earth is about to face a far greater problem than a moody Inhuman prince. Meanwhile, out in deep space, trouble was slowly brewing, and gliding through it with a singular purpose was the Silver Surfer. And if he has been spotted, it usually means one thing: Galactus isn't far behind. Gliding through the Andromeda Galaxy on his cosmic board made for him by Galactus using the power cosmic, the Silver Surfer draws too much attention from undesirable folks. Well, the Skrulls notice him and immediately hit the galactic panic button. They know how it goes with Silver Surfer. Wherever this shiny herald goes, the world devourer tends to follow. So the Skrulls do what any rational, self-respecting, shape-shifting empire would do when they try to hide their entire plan. Their plan was to simply cloak and bury it in sensor static and hope that they did not turn into Galactus's Tuesday lunch. Back on Earth, the Fantastic Four return to New York, but are about to face a situation darker than the Thing's surname. The city skyline looked like it had been lit on fire, and I'm not speaking metaphorically. It literally was glowing. Naturally, people assume the Human Torch had something to do with it, because who else flies around leaving trails of flame? While Johnny's off trying to explain he didn't set the atmosphere ablaze, Reed locks himself in his lab to run the numbers. Before Reed can crack the mystery, an unexpected guest shows up in the form of the Watcher. Not the most sociable cosmic entity, but when he visits, you know the stakes are higher than usual. I mean, it's not every day that the Watcher pays you a visit, right? So he admits to being the one behind why the sky looks so strange. The fire in the sky was basically his way of hiding Earth from the Surfer's senses. Because once the Surfer sees the planet, he'll send word to his boss Galactus, who is less of a visitor and more of a planetary extinction event kind of guy. Too late though, since fooling the Silver Surfer takes way more than a global scale party trick. The Surfer wades through the debris shield and zeroes in on Earth. He lands right on top of the Baxter building and transmits a beacon to you-know-who. Reed, Sue, Johnny, and Ben rush to intercept, and the Thing greets the alien intruder with a full-bodied tackle. And although the Thing knocks the Silver Surfer off the roof, it doesn't solve the real problem. Galactus has already arrived. His ship, Ta-2, hovers over Manhattan. The sky darkens. Everyone is scared shitless. No one knows what to do, and as for the being inside, this cosmic force in humanoid form lands and reveals that he's gonna suck the life out of Earth. The Watcher tries the diplomatic route and asks Galactus to reconsider. As you would expect, Galactus shrugs it off. The Human Torch and the Thing try to attack, but to no avail. After seeing that nothing seems to be slowing Galactus down, the Watcher tells them to stand down and wait for further instructions. Meanwhile, the Silver Surfer, who was dazed from Ben's haymaker, wakes up and falls into the apartment of Alicia Master. Alicia, who's blind, senses something in him that's more than cold metal and cosmic energy. She offers kindness. Empathy, and the Surfer, who's been Galactus's tool for who knows how long, starts to feel something else. He starts to feel a little human emotion called doubt. While Galactus sets up his planet-draining rig, the Watcher fills in the Fantastic Four. He tells them that if Galactus finishes assembling his machine, Earth becomes little more than a lifeless husk. The only way out that they have is actually in the Lion's Den, more specifically, a device on Galactus's ship, the only thing that could stop it. But someone needs to get there, and fast. So the Watcher enhances Johnny's powers to unimaginable levels, which was still just barely enough to survive the journey into space and retrieve what they need. Back at Alicia's, the Surfer listens. He learns about Earth, about the humans he doomed without a second thought. Alicia's words pierce through him and touch his heart, if at all he has such a thing. He begins to question everything, from his mission and his surprise to the sense and sensibility of his master. As Galactus is about to finish his setup, the Fantastic Four launch a final attack to slow him down. They know it well that the odds are heavily against them, but they must do what they must do. Galactus responds by unleashing the Punisher, of course, not the skull-shirt vigilante, but a robotic enforcer meant to keep pests like the Fantastic Four out of his way. And it does the job. But this delay is exactly what the Watcher needed. Meanwhile, Johnny returns from Galactus's ship, burned, exhausted, but alive. The man had done the job he was assigned and was now holding the one weapon that might make even Galactus reconsider his actions. And it was called the Ultimate Nullifier, a device so powerful it can erase anything, including its user. Reed holds the nullifier and makes his point. Galactus, who respects the balance of power in the universe more than most, agrees to spare Earth. But there's a catch. He would only leave if Reed handed the device back. Reed does that, and Galactus, for once, keeps his word. But before departing, he deals with the Surfer. One must have expected some sort of punishment filled with the wrath of a planet-eating being, but all Galactus does is send Silver Surfer into exile. He strips the Surfer of his spacefaring powers and leaves him bound to Earth. His herald had betrayed him, but maybe Galactus understood the reason behind that. Maybe even a cosmic god can sense when he's lost someone to something more human. After everything was done and dusted, Alicia thanks the Surfer, who now faces eternity, walking a world he once condemned. Ben, watching Alicia's compassion toward the Surfer, feels what I can best describe as the sting of rejection. He quietly leaves, carrying more within his heart than the weight of his body. The press, predictably, calls the whole thing a hoax, and life moves on. Somewhere else in the city, a man starts taking notes on Ben Grimm's movements. Meanwhile, Reed loses Sue again, this time emotionally. She storms out after Reed ignores her for the umpteenth time in favor of a machine. Johnny, finally free from cosmic errands, comes for his first day at Metro University. But Johnny's head isn't fully in college life, as his thoughts still linger on Crystal, still trapped behind Maximus's barrier in the Hidden Land. Fantastic Four: Life Story. A walk with the Fantastic Four through American history without any sliding timeline. In 2019, Marvel stumbled upon an idea so effective yet simple, it almost felt overdue. Spider-Man Life Story by Chip Zdarsky and Mark Bagley imagined a world where Peter Parker aged in real time, beginning in 1963. Instead of retcons and sliding timelines, the story went on alongside real American history, civil unrest, Vietnam, the Cold War, and everything else that shaped who Spider-Man became. Of course, Marvel did the same with the Fantastic Four, complete with period cameos, historical anchors, and reworked versions of familiar origin stories. Let's check it out. So, the story opens in 1961. America was clearly losing the space race, and after 3 consecutive failures in the Cassandra space program, President John F. Kennedy decides to call in some much-needed scientific backup. We meet Reed Richards, who was now the nation's last hope to save face against the Soviets. JFK assigns him to head the Cassandra 4 mission, despite protests from the petty and bitter Dr. Ricardo Jones, who delays the launch over Reed's untested antimatter fuel. Reed vents to his girlfriend, Susan Storm. But this isn't the Sue we met back in 1961 comics. No longer a background character or a show business aspirant, she was now a capable scientist and engineer in her own right. When Sue suggests they go through with the launch anyway, Johnny overhears and leverages his way onto the mission. He basically threatens to call NASA if Reed says no. That's blackmail, all right, but there was a tinge of patriotism in it. Anyway, Johnny happens to know a pilot too, and his name, if you haven't guessed already, was Ben Grimm, a disgraced former airman fresh off a fight with his commanding officer, who he may or may not have shipped to Singapore in a crate. With no better offers on the table, Ben joins the crew. They head to the launch site wearing what they call Cassandra 4 uniforms, which, if you squint, are the FF suits. Artist Sean Isaacs skips the wide-collared Kirby originals from Fantastic Four #3 and instead gives them the tighter jersey-style look that didn't appear until issue #6. A minor design miss, but noticeable. Reed and Ben don't even know each other until the night of the launch, which is already a huge difference from what we already know. Moving on, in orbit, the antimatter fuel reacts to cosmic radiation. We've seen this origin before, but this time there's a slight change. During the mutation, Reed experiences a vision of the Earth consumed atom by atom, and the one doing this was this huge guy with a strange helmet. The crew survives though, only to wake up in Walter Reed Hospital. Johnny's body has to be extinguished. Ben, now transformed, looks like someone carved him from brick and misery. But this time, the world doesn't treat them like freaks. Kennedy declares them heroes on live TV. The people love them, and there's even a parade held in their honor. They fight the Mole Man. No sign of doom yet. Reed and Sue tie the knot. Kennedy gets assassinated. The Fantastic Four appear on the Ed Sullivan Show the same night as the Beatles. Sue joins the civil rights marches with Martin Luther King Jr. And through it all, Reed keeps seeing that same vision, the one he saw up there about something, or someone, that's coming for Earth. Reed warns President Lyndon B. Johnson about it, but Johnson has bigger fires than visions and dreams to put out. Vietnam was burning, and the end of the world will have to wait. So Reed builds the Radical Cube, the gateway to subspace introduced back in Fantastic Four number 51. He plans to contact the entity he saw, but he needs Ben's help to do it. Dr. Jones, who still holds a grudge, sees an opening here and seeks Ben with the possibility of a cure using a device that Jones himself invented. Jones, if the name didn't click earlier, is actually a reworked version of the Changeling, the villain from the story called This Man, This Monster. And he's about to steal Ben's identity. When the Jones Ben comes to assist Reed, he doesn't suspect anything. But once the cube activates, Jones reveals he plans to push Reed through and leave him in the negative zone. But it backfires. Both of them fall through and end up face to face with the being from Reed's vision. And here's when we first meet Galactus. In that moment, Jones realizes the magnitude of what he's done. He sacrifices himself, throws Reed back through the portal, and is left behind. Meanwhile, the real Ben, who's back in human form, comes to his girlfriend Sally's house to propose to her. But the transformation doesn't hold, and he turns back into the Thing. The interesting part about the comic is that it isn't the Silver Surfer who shows Galactus where Earth is. It's Reed, and it's Reed's own desperation to avoid Galactus that leads the Planet Eater straight to us. The story goes on, but for the purpose of this video and its length, I'll move on. Shala-Bal, the female Silver Surfer, is actually the male Silver Surfer's bae. For most fans, the name Silver Surfer makes them picture in their heads Norrin Radd, the chrome-skinned herald of Galactus, the tragic loner who sacrificed everything to save his homeworld, and a longtime main guy in both comics and pop culture. He starred in some of Marvel's most philosophical epics, as long as they were based in space, and even got his claim to fame in Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer. But I'm not sure I want to suggest rewatching it, and you know why. Nevertheless, with Fantastic Four: First Steps about to release in a few days, we know that a female Silver Surfer will star in the movie. Most movie fans initially thought this was another woke gender swap, but no, this version is straight from the comics and is a different Silver Surfer altogether. She is called Shala-Bal. To longtime readers, she's not a new face. In fact, far from it. But for most moviegoers, she's about to become a known face. Shala-Bal first appeared as his love interest and moral anchor, someone he left behind on Zenn-La, their home planet, when he chose to become Galactus's herald. Over the decades, Shala has served sometimes as a ruler, sometimes as a victim, and sometimes as the Silver Surfer. Her earliest major arc came in Silver Surfer numbers 1 to 3 from 1968, where Mephisto also debuted and straight up went for the soul. He used Shala-Bal as a weapon against Norrin Radd's heart because he thought if the Surfer could not be broken physically, one can always shatter his spirit. Later, Fantastic Four numbers 155 to 157 from 1974 saw Dr. Doom brainwashing Shala to exploit her connection to the power cosmic itself. Once again, she was treated as nothing more than a pawn to hurt others. In Silver Surfer: The Enslavers from 1990, this equation changed as Shala-Bal assumed the leadership of her planet, Zenn-La. No longer a damsel in distress, she got the much-needed power, authority, and her own arc. There's also Earth X, an alternate future where Shala-Bal became the Silver Surfer herself. It wasn't a hopeful world, but it proved that in at least one version of the Marvel multiverse, she inherited his role as Galactus's herald. Fantastic Four, Grand Design and the Curious Case of MCU's Kang Problem. Fantastic Four Grand Design is Tom Scioli's 2-issue miniseries that explores 6 decades of Fantastic Four history. Told in a style that deliberately smells of Jack Kirby's early Marvel art, the miniseries doubles down on what made the Fantastic Four work in the first place instead of exploring their overdone origin story. Family, scientific curiosity, and the call of the unknown are pretty much the things that form the pillars of Grand Design, both emotionally and narratively. If Grand Design shows us how to reframe the Fantastic Four's legacy, Jonathan Hickman's Solve Everything storyline shows how to stretch it across the multiverse. Originally published during Hickman's acclaimed Fantastic Four run, Solve Everything gives us the Council of Reeds, which is basically a multiversal network of Reed Richards variants who banded together to quote-unquote solve everything, no matter the cost. The arc centers around Reed being offered a seat among his own kind, on the condition that he abandon his family and home. It's a test of who he is and goes on to show if Reed's belief in intellect is stronger than his commitment to those closest to him. Now, with Jonathan Majors no longer playing Kang, Solve Everything could be Plan B for Marvel Studios. Exchanging the Council of Kangs for the Council of Reeds sounds like the most logical thing to do. It's almost possible that RDJ's Doctor Doom is filling the power vacuum after the collapse of the Council of Kangs. Doom's rise through a failing multiverse would feel more organic than the introduction of another last-minute villain. And if there's one thing we know about the MCU, it's that they plan ahead, way ahead. It also keeps the tension grounded in character rather than actor spectacle from RDJ. Whether Fantastic Four First Steps leans into the retrospection of Grand Design or the philosophical scope of Solve Everything, both arcs show there's more than enough material to work with, and that includes the past, present, and future of the multiverse. That was all in this one, guys. See you around.